Um, okay. Glad to hear from everyone, actually. It was great to um, hear your names and your voices and also the topics that you would be interested in working on. Um, my name is Panayiotis Nicolaides, as been introduced before. The main topic of my presentation would be to give you a sense of what we started to do in the region. And this is actually pretty recent. I think the World Bank was a little bit, we were present, but not in a coordinated way, if you like. And PEMNA, the community here, it's one example of it, because now there is a community of practice, but around it, at the same time, there is more coordinated technical assistance. Well, were we absent? I don't think that we were completely absent from countries. We have people on the ground in most of the countries that you are that you come from, and but they worked on different things like economic projections, or I don't know, in China, for example, there are a lot of operations with environmental projects. So there is a variety of activities that takes place, but this is more of a coordinated response to regional issues regarding domestic revenue mobilization. And this has started recently. I joined with this purpose to help boost the activities, the regional activities of DRM. And I will take you through the what we do with a little bit of the focus of the countries that we are based, because the support comes mainly from the richest countries, some of which are in the region. Korea, for instance, or Japan are providing some of the funding, and also other countries, France, Denmark, Norway, and so on. But then we try to channel it to different projects of DRM where there is particular need. Um, I was thinking of how to motivate this. So this is a structure. I will motivate a little bit why this is necessary, and then I will talk about it, and then I will open to you for some questions so that we can discuss some of these issues. Um, and how would I motivate this? I thought of talking a little bit about the DRM in the region and the importance of it in development, because this is actually what it is about. Um, the trends that you see all over the world and in the developed world in general is as countries developed, they made efforts to raise more revenue, or maybe it's a two-way street. As they grew and they developed, they also went to a process of getting more revenue and building social welfare states and improving investments and productivity. So this is something that I think we should start from. Um, this from research done about 10 years ago from Tim Besley and co-authors named Taxation and Development. And the researchers here try to see what happens when countries grow. How do they correlate the revenues and the GDP per capita? And you would see this upward correlation at the very left, as you can see the graph, the left-hand side graph. So this plots the GDP per capita to the share of taxes, what you know as the tax to GDP ratio. And what we see here is that high-income countries, which are in red, tend to have over time as they grow, tend to have higher tax to GDP ratios, and low-income countries have lower. So if you would situate a lot of the East Asian countries today, they are more on the lower end. Um, But this is also done on a time period. So the right-hand side graph, it plots the 5-year averages over time from the 60s to today. So as these countries grew over time and they became high income, they also increased the share of taxes in the over their GDP. So it is a process of development without claiming any causation of this, but um, as countries grow, this is what we see. And one of the characteristics that they found, I think it was the colleague from Brunei before, where you said you're thinking about, a personal income tax. Um, One characteristic when they broke it down, I don't have the graph here, is that countries slowly switched from a process where they relied on trade taxes and excise taxes to more stable tax components, being CIT, PIT, and VAT. So this takes them through a process of formalization, where the employment becomes more formalized, the firms become more formalized, and slowly they turn from informal to formal. And that's how they build the tax base as they develop. This is a very, very recent research. And it takes me to the second point, which is related. Why do we need to this extra revenue to develop? Um, and I think this is related. It's from a different research done by some of my former colleagues, the World Inequality Lab in Paris, that they study inequalities, and it was only published last month. And what they do, they go through back in time, and they track, among other things, how countries have spent on what we call human capital expenditure. The two most important is healthcare and education. So this is what you need for a healthy workforce and population. Um, and what we see here, actually, to my surprise, when I had a look, because I'm interested in South and Southeast Asia here, I saw that the investment over the years in human capital, in education, and in the healthcare has been the lowest in Southeast Asia. And of course, it's very, very difficult to invest in this area if you have low tax to GDP ratios, because you need the revenue in order to invest. And then this has a profound effect on productivity. Um, this is what the paper is actually about. It's not about the growth in human capital expenditure. It's about how do taxes and development correlate with productivity. And then they find that the high growth countries in this area are the ones that are more productive. So revenue, countries can invest more, and the workforce over time can become more productive, and then it can contribute to overall growth. And the two reinforce each other. Then they go through a higher capital ratio, higher taxation ratios, and so on. So where we are in the region, this is a selected group of countries. This is where it comes from the proposal that we had to fund some of the countries and help them grow their tax ratios with certain reforms. That's why it's only 6. But it's more or less true based on your answers as well. Maybe these are the more lower end, I know, but then even the higher end, like Mongolia, I've done some work back in May in Mongolia, and I saw that it's relatively high. It's like 30%, but it's you have also the revenues that come from natural resources. So the stable components usually are a little bit low. And the line here is the 15%, the red line, straight line. You have a number of countries, just 6 countries here. And the revenues are more or less below 15%, depending on how we define them. So they have also a slightly downward trend in Asia. It's not the best graph, but I did this in a hurry, so you could forgive my sloppiness here. But this is what we see. And then it's true when we break them down into different tax components. So you see here in purple the PIT, and then above it in blue, in light blue, the CIT. And then we have the VAT, taxes on goods and services in gray, and taxes on international trade in yellow, and other taxes and non-tax revenue with green. So the not only the revenues are low, but the more stable components of these revenues are also low compared to OECD average here. PITs takes a lot more prominence in OECD countries. It's almost non-existent in many of the other countries. So very, very little revenue comes from PIT. And then a little bit from CIT, but I know that the major issue in the countries that were, not all, but many of them is that maybe you have a basic tax rate, but then a lot of it is forgone through several tax incentives and free economic zones. So this keeps CIT revenue very low. Yeah, then a major component in some of the countries comes from VAT, but it's still very low compared to OECD countries where you can see the percentage. So this is more or less the structure that we see. And in my opinion, we need to think of a way, see if we are to put things into perspective and think about growth and productivity and the aspirations of countries to become a high income by the next 20, 30 years, of how do we boost this. And there is no other ways other way than increasing the little bars that you see here. It's not, there's no shortcut around this to increase the tax expenditure. And this has profound effects on growth, on productivity, on education, on health care in the population. Part of it is driven by informality. So this is is from World Bank evidence data in a number of countries, but especially in countries of Southeast Asia, the economies are structured in such a way that they have very high levels of informality. And sometimes it's just the structure of the economy. For example, China might have a big industry, which is much harder, but then in other countries, you have smaller vendors, smaller companies, and so on. So it's very easy to go into informal sector. And the major challenge is this: how do we turn the informal to the formal through tax administration changes, through the use of data analytics, of the new information that is generated these days. And yeah, this would reduce eventually the shadow economy. I should have included something on inequality as well, because I also do sometimes. I didn't include something now that I'm thinking about it. But not having a PAT has profound effects on it, because usually countries are structured in such a way that they have a progressive personal income tax system where at the higher income levels you tax more. And by not including the population in the tax system, then you do have also profound progressivity challenges, let alone the fairness of it. So it's very hard to convince people to pay taxes if a large part of the population doesn't pay. Yes, so yeah, if the aspirations are to realize in the next few years, we need higher revenues, in my opinion, at least, and then needs lower informality, and this would eventually lead to more revenues that you would be able to invest properly, and it would provide a boost in the long term. This is the sequence, in my opinion. For this, we have many unknowns, and my colleagues, Matthias, touched on it, and I'm sure you will see the effects when we know more, when um, Chris presents later on. But yeah, if I had a magic stick, I would have loved to know more about what are the effective tax rates for firms and individuals, meaning what do individuals or firms actually pay overall in taxes over their income overall? And I don't know. I would presume that the lower part of the income distribution doesn't pay a lot because of informality. I would assume that the middle part pays quite a significant part, and I would assume that there is also a lot of evasion at the very top. And yeah, this also, it's an unknown. What are the main types of tax evasion, and how do we measure them? So it's still a measurement issue, and knowing what they are in order to address them. We don't know about tax incidents. So who really pays taxes once you introduce one? You increase the CIT rate. Is it passed on the workers? Is it passed on the consumers? Or is it the employers that actually pay? We don't know. So there's a lot to know about this in order to do proper policy. And it's the same with the VAT, the PIT, etc. And then you need to have a discussion about the tax mix for the future. How did this region and the countries rely, how did they approach taxation in the past, and how should they approach it going forward with the aims that they have? And of course, the digitalization, it's unavoidable. It will be a part, it is already a part of our life. Okay, so with this, I hope you're motivated to show you a little bit of what we do. This is more or less my graph that tries to make sense of the World Bank structure without making it too complicated for you. And I thought that it would be important because sometimes people ask me, well, you have two teams. You have governance that is on tax administration, and then economic policy. And then that's why I put some of these things overlapping. So at the global level, meaning that we have a lot of experts in Washington, D.C., and I think most of them are in three teams. One is a global fiscal team, which will, in the coming months, include both tax administration and tax policy. There is a DATAX team, which Chris will talk a little bit more about later, which it's composed of more empirical analysis geared towards they have a lot of knowledge of academia, and they can work a lot with data. And then there is also the development economics vice presidency, which is research on developing countries. And then we are more at the regional level, which is East Asia and the Pacific. And then we have two teams, but we have an overlap. So we function very much together when it comes to taxation in addressing the issues in both the policy and the administration. Yeah, others like to separate them a little bit. So, but for me, it's a little bit in between. And then coordination is at the regional level. I have a blue shade, but it's not very obvious here. But the PEMNA meetings can serve as a sort of regional coordination. And then we can also draw from the global level in the support that we have, but also from the outside. And then the activities are funded, some of them through the Global Tax Program, and there is a secretariat of that that deals with the funders and then comes back to us to finance the activities. So this is, I hope, my simplified, not too complicated version of the structure that for me inside took about 6 months to understand. um, yeah, the funding sources for the work that we do is one's the Global Tax Program, and this is a trust fund. The main contributors are there. There's mostly rich countries. And then we go back to them for the work that we do. Then we also have some World Bank executed activities, which is a number of instruments usually for economic policy would be the development policy financing, and then for any kind of tax administration investment, it could be through investment policy finance, project financing. Yeah, maybe I made a mistake there, but it's more of yeah, investing to an IT system and so on. And then there are also other trust fund activities. For example, EU and Korea are funding PEMNA. So let me take you through very quickly examples of, I chose 5 countries of our activities that are linked to the trust fund. Of course, we have others in other countries, and we have some activities in the Pacific as well. And then also the country offices have some activities. But I thought I would focus more on the trust fund for the time being. So in Cambodia, we're doing a lot of work in excise taxes lately. So we have an excise tax toolkit where we have um, analyzed. We've been there for a mission in September with experts, and we have analyzed the systems. How do they work in terms of customs and tax administration, and the tax policy as well when it comes to tobacco and alcohol. So we go through the beginning and we ask, once cigarettes arrive in a port in Cambodia, how do you deal with it? How do you store it somewhere? Do you put a stamp on it and so on? And is there a track and trace? And then we come to some recommendations. So this is an exercise that we have done with Cambodian officials in September. Cost of compliance survey is something that we also do, and we have plans of doing here, sending a questionnaire to firms and seeing how they respond in terms of the complications that they might have with the tax authorities. Do they file easily? What happens when they have refunds? How quickly do they receive them? Is there an electronic payment, and so on? So trying to find bottlenecks in the process. We've done some tax incidence analysis of VAT exemptions. This related to food products, for instance. And then we have a lot of work that's starting in tax expenditure. And I think this is a major issue in the region. And countries vary on what they do. Mostly here and in other countries, we are in the process of accounting properly, at least, of what tax expenditure we have. This would be a good start for most of the countries. But they do lose a lot of revenue, both from CIT, from PIT, and from VAT because of tax expenditure. And of course, yeah, so we would like to do more, like strengthen the PIT, the CIT, and rationalizing tax incentives. In Lao, we did the same exercise with the excise taxes toolkit, and there is an upcoming reform of excise taxes. So we try to help the authorities with the new law, especially on tobacco and alcohol. the level of tax expenditure is even one step back. So we're trying to see if we can help Lao officials with revising the CIT returns so that the companies can report. And then we've done a lot of work on international taxation, as my Laotian colleague would know, and introducing the global minimum tax, aligning the country with the international social norms. And then there is a TADAT in January that we are also contributing. Indonesia, we're in the process of still approaching and working with the authorities. I think the main vehicle is the last one, which is the Public Finance Review. It's a publication of the World Bank that goes into in depth into the public finance of the country. And then there is a revenue chapter. So we have a chance there to do a lot of work and work on special topics, some of which are listed above. So capital income taxation, tax efficiency. I think they would like to look the team. What are the revenues that generate more? What are the taxes that generate more revenues? Are there any changes that need to take place? There is a lot of work done at the subnational tax office levels that also colleagues from here have contributed, how to improve their audits and so on. What is the relationship between subnational and national? In the Philippines, there's also a public finance review going on that has started. So the team has many ideas for that. And again, this is part of the review process. And also trying to work on VAT exemptions and improving the effectiveness and efficiency. There is work on health taxes, both on policy and governance. And eventually, what they would like to do is work more on progressivity, analyzing taxes on high net worth individuals, and so on. So this is also an area in the future that colleagues are trying to work on. Vietnam, lastly, this is my fifth country, and I won't tire you anymore because I think you get a good sense of the work that is being done. There is a lot going on with compliance risk management, very long mission coming up in the end of November in that, and that involves a lot of projects in digitalization. It's very much demand driven, so the process is that the authorities in discussions that we might have, they might ask for help, and this is for you to get an idea. And then again, there is also a public finance review that is starting. This is the third country in the region. And then eventually we would also want to look at the tax incentives and exceptions, because this is something that the tax administrator, the Ministry of Finance is also worrying about. So there is a lot of this in Vietnam, and at least starting from the costing side. So it's a measurement issue at the end of the day, knowing how much of tax revenues you forfeit because of the exceptions that you have, and listing them properly, then rationalizing eventually.